always believed our marriage was unbreakable, until I discovered my wife being intimate with another man in the next room. Welcome to the Love and Betrayed Love channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I had a nagging feeling, but I felt better now. My initial confusion began to dissipate as my heart rate decreased and the adrenaline wore off. I lay back down and reached for my wife. The already prevalent apprehensive feeling became even more intense when my hand did not locate her next to me in bed. I tried to reassure myself by supposing she had gone to the restroom and accidentally awakened me up. We both attended summer teacher workshops, with me attending for middle school teachers and my wife, Laura, for elementary teachers. We have been teaching in the same school district for the past 6 years. I've worked with the district for 9 years and Laura joined 3 years after I teach high school history, and she is one of our 3rd grade instructors. Our district sends us to an annual conference where we learn how to enhance our reading scores on state assessments. It's always enjoyable to take a break from the district. Sure, some time is spent in conference rooms, listening to experts, consultants and colleagues discuss the latest and best strategies. But the evenings were ours to enjoy, and we made the most of them with dinner and dancing. It was our last evening and we were leaving in the morning. In any case, closer to the morning. We enjoyed a delicious meal at a local restaurant, before spending the rest of the evening with acquaintances at a neighboring club. I'm sure you can guess that drinking and dancing resulted in a lot of flirting, but, as always, everyone departed with who they were intended to, and we arrived in our room with enough energy to make love before falling asleep. Nothing appeared to be coming from the bathroom, but I did observe that the door adjacent to our room and the one next door were slightly open. This struck me as unusual. Much more so, it increased my worry to a new degree. I tried to remember who was in the room next to us. Sleep disorientation and nagging doubts were preventing me from thinking clearly just now. I could hear things now, but they were not coming from the bathroom. Voices conversing gently to each other could be heard from the next room's door, so I silently got out of bed and moved towards the voices. When I arrived, our side appeared to be almost closed, while the other side was wide open. I peeked through the gap between the door and the frame and saw 2 figures near the bed. I knew what I was going to see before I even reached the gap. It didn't take a rocket scientist to see what was behind the door. The dim table lamp provided enough light to observe what was going on. She was cheating on me since I was in nearly complete darkness. It seemed as if I were peering inside the room in broad daylight. I heard her exclaim, "Oh my God, Liam. It has been an incredible 3 days." What my remaining mental faculties were rattled. 3 days, 3 days. I was being a complete idiot. Our lunch on Wednesday was fantastic, and missing the clinics on Thursday was quite unfortunate. I believe a few staff members at my school are concerned about my absence, but I know they have no idea what I've been up to, and last night was simply wonderful. When Daniel was in the next room, he said that if he can't make you happy and content, those of us who can should take responsibility. Liam responded, "Liam, don't deceive yourself. Daniel does so much more, but I cannot imagine a better lover." Laura objected. I smiled briefly before realizing her words didn't even come close to describing what I was experiencing. My wrath surged over when the fog cleared. "How can this be?" Laura asked Liam. "Look, I've been intrigued recently. Our time together has been incredible, and it ends tonight. I am going home with to be the most lovely wife a man could ask for. Daniel won't require attention for years, and my guilt will fuel it." Laura concluded that Liam wasn't a big guy and I could have handled him easily, especially given the amount of adrenaline my fury was producing. In fact, I probably would have annihilated him. I'm not an angel and my emotions can go out of hand at times. It is both my blessing and my misfortune. I understood myself and was capable of doing havoc without hesitation, at least in the heat of the moment. I almost succumbed to temptation, but in the back of my mind I was holding back, looking back. I can't say if the decision was good or bad. The key point is that it kept me out of jail. A swift strategy began to emerge in my thoughts, and I realized that I needed some key evidence to ensure that others accepted my story. I was thinking about where my phone or camera was when I realized I was holding it in my right hand. My subconscious must have known or suspected what was going on, because I grabbed it up from the nightstand as I approached the door. Silence and concealment were critical to the accomplishment of my plan. I set my phone to video record and opened the door slightly to see the entire screen. I'd captured a video of her cheating and was ready to spit on both of them before snapping their necks. I had a good enough recording of both of their faces to recognize them. They plainly addressed one another by name. It was time to get out of there and tell her just how much her secret adventure would cost. Although I do not have a formal diagnosis, I do have several compulsions, one of which is to not waste time. Laura was willing to tolerate most of my flaws, but this one made her laugh, shake her head and occasionally walk away. One of my travel habits was packing 99 of the time I left the hotel the night before that was going to serve me well. Tonight again stealth ninja was paramount. I won't go into detail, but my skill was softly opening and closing doors. It requires a delicate touch to and a lot of time to execute it correctly, but I had enough practice to be burglar-likey. I began with the door to our side. It helped that they were quiet but completely absorbed in each other. I believe the fact that it was their final scene made them more irresponsible than they had intended. I was able to close the door and slide the deadbolt shut without anyone knowing. I instantly moved to my side. Clothes were laid out for the following day. Suitcases were packed, laptops and reading had been collected, stored in travel bags, and just the most essential necessities remained by the sink. I immediately dressed and packed everything loosely in my bag. I grabbed her trip clothing and packed them together with her personal hygiene products. The travel bags fit on top of the luggage. Thus, while difficult, I was able to carry both bags at once. I didn't know her schedule, but I wanted to finish everything ahead of them. I hastily examined my items and directed the suitcases to the door. Anyone who has stayed in a hotel can understand how difficult the following step was. Hotel doors are notoriously loud. Perhaps they do this on purpose for security reasons. Perhaps hotels don't care about the noise level of their doors. But I knew I'd have to be good and lucky to make it through the following part. I softly turned the doorknob to unlock the security bars and locks. Quiet enough, I slowly opened the door, placing one suitcase in front of it and dragging the other out into the hallway. I returned to the room and removed all of the towel and linens, flinging them down the corridor and into the sales area. I knew she could simply grab some of Liam's clothes, but I was going to try to make her uncomfortable and let her know I was aware of her infidelity. She had to realize I was furious beyond belief. Moving as quickly as I could in stealth mode, I returned to my chamber, my room, not yours. How fast our minds adjust and begin the most difficult aspect of the plan. I put the second bag into the hallway and closed the door. It wasn't easy and I'm not sure how I accomplished it, but I managed to turn the outside handle with the key before it closed, preventing the latch from crashing shut and revealing my identity. As I previously stated, it was not without luck, but it appears that I received some karma for cheating on my wife. Once that was completed, it was just a matter of heading down to the front desk and alerting the night clerk that my wife and I had an emergency and that he may eject us from the hotel immediately. I informed him that my wife had already gone outside and was on the phone with her family. I handed him both room keys, rolled the suitcases out the front door, loaded them into the car, and began the lengthy drive home. Proceed to the next chapter. I know that if I had driven all the way from Seattle to Miami, stopping only to nap at rest stops, it would not have felt as long as the 6 hours I traveled home that morning home. What a joke. It was no longer home. I am not sure if it was really a home. It was a home or a habitation. It was only a roof that kept me warm and dry, a safe spot to keep my belongings. Again I realized that I was thinking as a single person, not as a husband or partner. It made me feel sad and angry again. The fact that this lonely voyage began at 3:00 a.m. added to its loneliness looking back. I'm pretty sure it was a good thing I left early, because I don't remember much about the first 2 hours of the trip, except my brain trying to figure out why I woke up early. Another saving grace for my mental state was the absence of the possibly severe hangover that might have occurred. Otherwise now I would have accepted that hangover, because it would have indicated that I was either still in the dark or she was correct. In that case, we would have gotten up later, eaten a decent breakfast, divided driving responsibilities, and discussed what we had leared. This week. The sun had already risen, yet my thoughts were still hazy. I needed to eat and really wanted coffee to keep me going, so I started looking for exit signs featuring fast food outlets. My iPhone has an app that showed me what was around the closest freeway exits. I knew the road well enough to know where the exits were, but I had no idea what was available at each. I kept my phone turned on but was astonished to see 3 missed calls and at least half a dozen messages from unknown numbers. I also didn't hear its buzzer, which made me realize how disconnected I'd been throughout the trip. Another reason I needed to step out of the car and collect my thoughts, focusing on the present. I recognized the message and missed calls came from Laura. She must have attempted to reach me using the asshole's personal phone as well as the hotel room phone. I removed all missed calls and voicemails. I didn't feel like chatting to her because part of my plan was to leave her at the hotel with her new friend. I only read as many text messages as needed to delete them. Daniel, where are you? Kindly call. Yeah, certainly not anytime soon. If I could help it. I stopped for a bite and a drink to stretch my legs and use the restroom. The sooner I reduce the distance between us, the better off I will be. At least that is what I told myself. Why it haunted me. I am not easy to live with. I am aware of this. So does she. I am a workaholic who strives to be the best teacher for my kids. Laura possessed a similar drive. At least that is what she told me, and I've witnessed her work in the classroom. We didn't have children yet. Since she wanted to establish herself in the district and because we were devoted to the students, we frequently referred to them as our children. I was also overly trusting in several instances, but it's an all-or-nothing feeling. I believe. Until someone proves that I can't do it anymore, then I lose entire trust. I make no assumptions about how I interpret the behavior of others. It remains a blank slate until it is broken, then it is not present at all. That is exactly where we are now, and Laura should be aware that she has seen it in my interactions with administration professors and certain students. Those who have lied to or intentionally mislead me I won't be able to trust again. I'm not talking about occasional missteps. I'm honest and want others to be the same. I am faithful deep down. I also expect that from my wife. Laura is my first wife, but this is not my first long-term committed relationship. I had a girlfriend in high school and we'd been dating since sophomore homecoming. By the time graduation approached, we were inseparable. One of the few things we disagreed on was where we would attend college. I stayed local and attended a nearby state college. This college was not our family's favorite, but I had several cousins who attended and I genuinely enjoyed the place. She was planning to study business out of state. We both got excellent grades and exam scores, but we did not respect each other's educational choices. Perhaps it was not a lack of respect, but rather a disagreement in priorities. It's safe to conclude that attending college and living so far apart must have hampered our relationship. She eventually failed first, but I knew it wouldn't work out. We agreed to end the relationship till we finished college and then see if we wanted to continue it. We didn't, and we both realized it. At the moment, I had a couple of consistent relationships in college, but we all realized that wasn't what we came for, especially over the first 3 years. In my senior year, I met Emily Sherin, who was listed on my birth certificate and worked in the theater department. Almost from the time we met, we felt comfortable in one another's presence. She even got me to play a little role in one of the plays that year, and I realized that performing on stage was similar to teaching a lesson. As a high school social studies teacher, I developed a variety of skills that proved useful, from speaking confidently in front of a group to acting and explaining to my students the substance of what I wanted to express. We graduated and obtained employment in the same neighborhood, allowing us to rent an apartment and focus on our professions and personal relationships after college. She wasn't a celebrity or a model, but she was attractive like the conventional girl next door. She landed some outstanding ads for local businesses and was considered for a position at a local television news station. After around 6 months, she became silent and anxious. I didn't think she was playing around, but I could see something was hurting her. We risked making our relationship permanent, but we both agreed we weren't ready for it. Yet I attempted to trick her into telling me what was wrong, but I never got her to be honest. I returned home a little late after an especially hard week at school. I entered the apartment. I instantly noticed a few boxes and a suitcase in the entrance. As I walked into the living room, I found Emily sitting on the couch looking uncomfortable. She recognized me right away, smiled briefly and indicated for me to sit beside her. Even though we didn't formally promise faithfulness, she didn't seem like the sort to play with me. "Daniel, I know you've suspected something has been bothering me recently," Emily began. I nodded as she continued. "We constantly discuss things out and it has made us stronger. I can't explain why I hid this from you, and it worries me that I did, but I had an opportunity to work in California on the pilot of a new sitcom, so I decided to accept it as an offer I cannot refuse." I was stunned until that point. I had not comprehended what that meant. It wasn't good enough to lose my speech. Being shocked wasn't good enough, so I was stunned. "I have found my voice." "Honey. That is wonderful. I know I have responsibilities for the entire school year, but you can relocate there now and I'll join you after school ends. We'll have the summer to settle in and I can look for work." I didn't have to see her face to know there was a cause. She had kept it from me for so long. "Kit. I don't think you should join me. I have enough acquaintances and connections in the industry to know what I would have to do or suggest. I don't want to put you under that kind of emotional burden. I love you more than I ever will love a man, but I cannot expect you to live like we, and I can't afford to be constantly concerned about how you'll react to various situations." Emily had burst into tears at this point. "Dad and my brother Bill will be here shortly to help me pack. This is the most difficult thing I've ever had to accomplish. You'll never know how much I regret ending our relationship this way." We had never gotten even halfway through such a major decision without discussing it. She'd utterly shut me out. I understood why. I knew she believed I could persuade her not to travel or to allow me to accompany her. I also realized she didn't mean to hurt me, so she kept the news and waited as long as she could, but none of that knowledge seemed to matter. I was a huge pain and shutting her off was beyond me. "What the hell are you allowing yourself to do? We've talked about every decision in our relationship that could influence each other. You're selfish. How do you know my capabilities? How far will you go to advance your career? I think I should be happy now if you are so willing to compromise your morals in the future. You may have already done it locally. Perhaps that is why you have avoided deeper conversations about marrying me." What a relief. I was furious, hurt like I had never been hurt before. In turn, I wanted to hurt her back. I understand she expected a similar reaction, but it still affected her terribly. She was only whispering. "I apologize, Daniel, I will never be able to tell you how much." She stood up and approached the door where her father and brother were waiting for her. She had things ready for me when I arrived, but she wanted to speak with me first. I know they heard what I said like me enough to understand why I said it and knew deep down that I didn't mean it. They loaded her belongings and were ready to leave in less than 20 minutes. She gazed at me waiting to see if I had anything else to say or do. I stood stoically, not looking at her or daring to do anything, but paralyzed with suspense. She smiled softly, looked at me with genuine eyes and said, "I love you." Before I shut the door, I was distraught. It took 2 years and a move to a different school district before I considered dating again. Trust took a lot longer next chapter, and I couldn't believe I hadn't guessed Laura was in a relationship at the conference or that she could have considered having an affair short or long term. It was that degree of trust that helped me realize that not all women would abandon me. I met Laura at the start of the new school year in this district. Every year opens with an all-faculty meeting and a superintendent speech including a motivational speaker, to get everyone enthusiastic about the school year. This is typically a waste of time and money because teachers are not in need of motivation at the start of the school year. This might be a better alternative around the middle of the first semester or when testing season approaches. However, administrators are not usually known for their ability to make practical decisions. I befriended one of the district's 4th grade teachers. We were just mates. I arrived early for the meeting and took a seat close to her. I was doodling on my iPad. Yes, I was playing a game when Anna approached me with a very fresh face. Anna introduced her as Laura, the new 3rd grade teacher, and promptly set her down between us. I took the signal and began a casual conversation while we waited for the meeting to begin. It found out we had a lot in common, so I invited her over for coffee after we concluded our scheduled meetings for the day. Supper seemed a little presumptuous because we had just recently met, but I felt that a pleasant talk over afternoon coffee could lead to dinner tonight or later this week. She agreed and we ended up only having supper that night. We agreed to meet for supper on Friday night. Needless to say, our relationship developed quickly and we were planned a wedding in June after graduation. Trust. I always thought our marriage was excellent. We spoke about everything. We had an incredible love life that was consistent, spontaneous and full of excitement. We shared common aspirations and agreed to start a family. Naively, I despised being emotionally injured. Who hates it? Humans have a tendency to avoid anything that can hurt or injure them. Is love blind? Of course, in some ways we protect ourselves from the things that can harm us the most, and we can't believe that the person we most trust will let us down. Laura could not get away with anything. I let her do what she did, act as she did and salve her the moments she stole. I had no intention of seeing her. She was a self-centered. Do not get me wrong. She made choices, awful decisions. However, the unexpected occurred due to my lack of vigilance. The decision to try something new on the side was a unilateral one. Just like Emily, I was a gullible fool. I am sure she will tell me it did not signify anything. I didn't miss anything or she didn't mean to hurt me, so she didn't discuss her impulses. Proceed to the next chapter. Even though I began to pay more attention to the road, time remained a strange concept to me. I realized I was approximately an hour away from home and it was approaching 8 a.m. I knew I needed to purchase a few things to keep my life and assets safe. Matt's stop at a building supply store allowed me to purchase some vital goods. The second destination was Radio Shack, while the third was a liquor store. It was still early, but retailers in cities and suburbs open unusually early on Saturdays. I knew the last store was a no-go, but I also knew that once I had the opportunity to stop moving, I would need to forget about myself for a bit. I was confident I had at least 24 hours to prepare. I hoped that by leaving her in an embarrassing situation with the typical modes of communication, I might forgive her. Laura would not arrive too soon. I am pretty sure Steve lived in the opposite part of the state. She didn't have a cell phone or laptop, and her family lived in another state. I'm almost convinced she would contact my family as a last resort, because she couldn't be certain of what I had told them. When I got home, I got right to work. I knew if I stopped moving, things would go wrong. So I stayed busy as long as possible, changed the locks, set up the recorder and webcam in the living room and unload the baggage, mine inside, hers outside. I grabbed a box of garbage bags, gathered some boxes from our garage and began packaging items that belonged particularly to Laura. As far as I could tell, I knew we'd have to quarrel about it later, but honestly I doubted there was anything I could get my hands on other than home, my home, and this time it was truly mine, not some emotional fragment from my marriage. I got it in the spring before meeting Laura as a form of self-exile from dating. Even as a school teacher, I had managed to accumulate a significant amount of money. There were few expenses above the necessities, and I had a summer job to keep my mind occupied, so the funds piled quickly. I made a significant down payment on a 3-bedroom 2B2 car garage home near the school where I taught, and was able to pay off the mortgage rather fast. Of course it was in my name, purchased before we met. More than 3/4 were paid off before marriage and I would strive to maintain them that way. The odd thing is I knew I'd sell it as soon as the divorce was finalized. Through no fault of my own, I would never repeat what had happened. Our house was essentially a shell, a box of belongings whose value was plummeting rapidly. Phone taps and webcams were designed to capture every discussion I or anybody else had in my home. The locks were designed to prevent Laura out unless she had my approval. It's astonishing how much a regular garbage bag can carry. Drawers, jewelry cabinets and medicine cabinets were emptied swiftly, especially when you don't care what kind of packaging they're in. A few mocking smiles while seeing me carelessly put handfuls of things into bags and boxes provided me with some therapeutic payback. After I finished, the boxes and bags were heaped in the garage. I packed as much as could fit into Laura's car and put the remainder in front of the garage door along with her suitcase and travel bag. I knew she'd arrive sooner or later and I didn't want her in the house. The sun was fallen and I had nothing else to do. There was a bottle with my name on it and it seemed like it was time to open it. I anticipated to wake up, with my heart thumping from each drink. I knew what the morning would bring. I gradually forgot about my life and marriage. The hangover would be a delightful after effect. While the headache and hugging the dresser would divert my attention, the next chapter began with a knock. I opened my eyes surprised to discover that it wasn't a headache, nausea or other restroom demands that had woken me up. It was the knocking again. I needed to figure out why the knocking wasn't just in my brain, but also outside of it. I was straining to breathe properly, so it took me a minute to realize the banging came from the front door. Alternatively, someone was knocking on it. As I gathered my thoughts, I remembered I was still wearing my hotel clothes slightly soiled. As an understatement. Another bump. I pulled off my clothing and discovered a pair of running shorts and a t-shirt. I put on a robe and waddled to the door. There was another knock and a voice on the other side. "Mr. Fredericks, this is the cops. Please open the door." I got to the door 1 second. "Okay, I understand, better open it now before he knocks again." See, I opened the door and saw the hand approaching it again. It came to a stop before knocking and the uniformed gentleman remarked, "Mr. Fredericks." I nodded slightly. The look on my face indicated that I had the misfortune of waking up in the morning on a better day. "Mr. Fredericks. Mrs. Laura Fredericks is here to see us, but she appears to be confined inside her home." "Well, officer, Mrs. Fredericks no longer lives here." As I said, this a strangled so could be heard to the right of the door. "We understand you are still married. Is this true, Mr. Fredericks?" The officer inquired. "This is merely a momentary condition, mostly due to the fact that it is the weekend. Come tomorrow morning as early as possible, I will remedy this minor error. This time it was not so friendly, and then show me the law, and I mean the text of the law, which says I owe my wife an accommodation. Then I will open the door for her. Until then, her clothes and essential possessions are folded in the car or placed in front of the house, along with her cell phone and laptop, phone service, credit cards, auto insurance and other items that have been cancelled." The officer looked to his left, grimaced and inquired, "Is this truly essential?" "Mr. Fredericks, I merely said yes, officer, without a question." I closed the door and returned to the window. The police assisted Laura in walking away from the door to her car. She looked awful. Her hair was messy and I have no idea where her clothes came from. I was torn. She deserved everything she was feeling right now, and at the same time she was the lady I adored. Compassion was immediately suppressed and I moved away from the window, heading back to my bedroom. The following chapter. I was able to contact the credit card companies and cancel all of our shared cards as well as her cell phone. My auto insurance was also cancelled and I conducted some online banking. So much for the benefits of electronic access. I also selected 4 divorce attorneys who were regarded as the best in the area, and they booked appointments online. Since arriving here, I've never thought of summer as anything more than a time to prepare for the upcoming academic year. I'll make the most of tomorrow when it arrives. I felt better in the morning than I did the day before. My head was still a mess and I was completely overwhelmed. I had set goals for the day and needed to get started: a shower and breakfast, clean clothing. So I'm off to meet some new people. Can your lawyer become your friend? I suppose so, but in reality I was looking for an advocate who could help me maintain my dignity. Hopefully, Contacting 4 will narrow the pool of candidates Laura has to choose from. Okay, I too am capable of selfish behavior. The 4 appointments concluded that I would most likely keep my house, but there were no guarantees because it had been partially paid for while we were married. They could argue that she had some equity in it. We were close enough in seniority that our pensions and salaries were approximately equal. 2 of them told me off the record that my photos and notes could be useful as leverage, but threatening to release them on the internet would most likely be interpreted as extortion. The mere fact that I have them on tape should suffice to avoid child support, pension division, and house control. It is absolutely insane that our society today tolerates adultery in our state as well as most others. Divorce is not advantageous for any reason other than irreconcilable differences. She's cheating and it's a bad decision. Attempt to forgive the okay. Those are my words, not the legal system's. Avoid alienating attachments too. Like Liam, I had a problem with her promises, not his. That's why I was adamant about not allowing her back into the house. I questioned Jackson, the lawyer. I decided to file a breach of contract suit for both of them in case she obtained a court order to enter the house. He stated that others have attempted this angle before and it is extremely difficult to succeed. I told him it was a matter of principle that I wanted her to be reminded of what she had done and that I believed verbal promises made in front of witnesses were binding. It also served as a reminder that if she insisted on disclosing the details, the situation could quickly escalate. I didn't want to go any further than cutting her out of my life, finding a way to move on while maintaining my self-respect. She had to be aware that it could resurface and have a negative impact on her family relationships and teaching profession. Not only was she unfaithful, but she also determined to satisfy her urges by representing the district at a conference. Yes, if she'd been told the truth, things could have turned out badly quickly. There would have been a lot of rumors, speculation and innuendo among those who were present. We planned to serve her on Thursday if we could find out where she ended up living. I had a few suggestions about where to look and I shared them with Jackson. I didn't feel like doing it self and he agreed it would be more convenient for him. I was certain that the only person she could rely on right now was March. Anna was my best friend in the neighborhood and perhaps the finest friend in the world. She always had my back and I had hers. She continuously reminded me that she was the one who brought Laura into my life. They too became closest friends, possibly with a young girl. Power enabled their friendship to become just as powerful and long-lasting. Laura had to make up a tale, so Anna could assist her. A wild misunderstanding the fact that I had yet to hear from Anna suggested that she had serious reservations that Laura was not incorrect. I would not put that on Anna. She realized how lonely Laura was in terms of family and friends, and while she undoubtedly questioned Laura's story, she felt she was now compelled to be her friend. I wish I could claim I repeated the story 4 times that day, but that was not the case. I was fatigued, both intellectually and emotionally, due in part to the long travel and following activity on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, the alcohol may have contributed. Admittedly, my rage has subsided. There would be no forgiveness. I am a hard-hearted bastard who knows what I am capable of. There would be no forgiveness. There would be no reconciliation, nor would there be a post with rotting vegetables. Of course, that was more a societal shift than a personal desire. So halfway between forgiveness and public shame, proceed to the next chapter. I immediately understood that staying at home on Monday nights and Tuesdays was not going to work, being surrounded by us, and self-pity was simply exacerbating my depression. So I made a plan. Take a road trip. There's a small town about 3 to 4 hours west of us, that has a fantastic selection of eateries and is secluded enough for me to get my act together. Yes, I had taken Laura there several times, but it was initially my home and getting to know the community would help. I got back on the road first thing Wednesday. This time I was rested and had an errand to complete. The drive was satisfactory. Thank God for satellite radio. I was able to book a hotel room before noon. The room wasn't ready until the end of the day, but it was reserved so I could go find a place to relax. There was a small park on the north side of town and a children's fishing pond on the west side. Armed with literature and a comfortable chair in the backyard. I went to a safe haven to escape the world I enjoy reading, and the saddest part of my job as a teacher was that I rarely had time to read what I wanted when I wanted. I set aside time during the summer, but I always fell behind on my reading list when I read. I became completely immersed in the story, and it was often difficult to pull myself away from it. Perhaps it was escapism, but I wanted to focus, and the best approach I could think of was to entirely remove myself from the issue and return to it, rejuvenated and rested. Before I knew it, my stomach was rumbling and it was almost lunchtime. I already feel better. I decided to return to the hotel, grab my belongings and then locate something to eat. Once I arrived at the hotel, I decided to check my phone. I kept it switched off to focus on real life, but I wanted to see if my lawyer had any news and ensure that my family didn't want my assistance. I hadn't given it much attention, mainly because I didn't want to confront it, but Laura hadn't. ATT attempted to contact me since Saturday. It didn't take long for me to realize she'd need some time to get herself together, and the phone was obviously not at the top of her priority list. So I was annoyed to find the message on voicemail. The message simply stated, "Please call." The voicemail message was slightly lengthier, but essentially the same. "Daniel, please call me as soon as you can. We need to talk." That statement is simply absurd, regardless of how many times you've seen, heard or read it. Of course you should, but I believe it would have been more fitting last week before the midday and midnight dates began. Damn it, okay. I am here to take my mind off of it, and that is exactly what I need to accomplish. I promptly texted back, "Not now, give me a few days until I can switch off my phone." She sent back, "Okay or okay." This made me snort. Have you ever wanted to reach out into cyberspace via your phone, monitor or tablet and slap the person on the other end? Yes, I do that frequently. I also have paintball guns in my car to stop folks who should not be driving. Okay, I understand anger management, but you know you'd like to report that to the police. Just keep an eye out for those with a few paint spots and ticket them for a general infraction. Come on. This would significantly reduce road rage. Really, it would reduce it. But I digress. Now I'm going back to my books, trying to forget the incorrect horse, cyber technology and poor driving. Proceed to the next chapter. The next morning I wake up sleeping on the book I was reading, still wearing my clothing from the day before. Man, this has to stop. After showering and changing, I was ready to go to a coffee shop that served the most delicious cinnamon buns and coffee. That's something that every city possesses, but since I'm here, I'm going to stick to my opinion. I resolved to return to my park and once again leave the world and its problems behind. If Jackson had done what he needed to do, Laura would have been served today and I'd be free of the electronic world at some time. I'd have to inform my family that they would not be like the ones you've heard about, where few or many would support her. Blood is thicker than water, not in a redneck sense, but my family supported each other, and their love for me and respect for the way I made decisions reassured me that I was not in jeopardy. They would be saddened, but supportive of me. My digestive system and my body's need for sustenance reminded me of reality. I decided to return to the spot I had visited the night before. It was the best Mexican meal I'd ever had, and it was worth coming back again and again. After the dinner, which was far more than I required, I decided to check my phone again. Laura sent one message. "Daniel, I am very sorry, please forgive me." I received a voice message from a number I recognized as one of the Jacksons, followed by another from Anna. "Daniel, call me please," short and succinct. I guess I was correct when I stated Laura was with Anna, or at least talked to her. Anna responded. "Daniel." "Yes, Margie, it's me," I responded. "Oh goodness, what's happening?" "Laura is in complete turmoil and you vanished off the face of the earth." Life, as I knew it, came to an end early Saturday morning. Falling from the face of the world would have been preferable. Laura has barely recovered consciousness since Sunday. She was virtually catatonic when she received the package from your attorney today. What happened during the conference? Gladys abruptly dropped Laura off late Saturday night. "How are you doing?" Laura only mumbled about how she had wrecked everything. Gladys was an elementary school teacher who had long maintained her virginity. I do not think she was a lesbian. She hadn't found a partner she liked yet, and she was loyal to her students. That's about right, Anna. I couldn't have expressed it better myself. I recognize you, Daniel, and I believe your conclusion was based on facts. However, you have a habit of going off on tangent. Was it worth leaving her on the other side of the state with nothing here? This will assist. So I hung up. I found a video on my phone and forwarded it to her. It should have astonished her, possibly upset her, but it would undoubtedly help answer her query. She could handle it. Anna knew me and should have expected this. Alternatively, it would reveal my emotional condition and the gravity of the situation. I turned off the phone again for a bit. We discuss later. So Laura had the documents, and for the time being she had control of everything. That provided me with some temporary peace of mind. A weight was lifted from my shoulders and I felt fatigued again. The hotel bed called to me and I complied. Proceed to the next chapter. This was not a small town, as I may have mentioned previously. It was large enough to support a small institution in this section of the state, and most college campuses had a local pizzeria to serve the student body. In my opinion, pizza was a key food group on the food pyramid. Pizza was the interior of a triangle, with everything else bordered by a pencil line. Pizza could be eaten as both dinner and breakfast. So I headed to campus to place my order. I meant to place an order for takeout pizza. I observed a woman around my age who looked very familiar. I assumed it was a former pupil from my initial years as a teacher, but something seemed odd. When it was my turn to order, I realized she saw me and had the same expression on her face as I did a few minutes earlier. I ordered the King of the Hill, a super meat combo of every type of meat known to man and a few I suppose not so well known, but I didn't inquire and informed them. It was time to leave when it suddenly struck me: Jessica. It was Jessica. This woman's name was Jessica Green. It's a small world, Mr. Disney. It was unbelievable. Jessica Green was my high school sweetheart. I held out the money to the cashier and turned my head to check if she had discovered the same thing I had. We rapidly went from awry smiles to full laughs as we realized how silly it was to be meeting here so many years later. I lifted my eyebrows between giggles and she nodded. I gathered my change, put some in the tip jar, and went over to her table. She was alone and began eating what I thought was a calzone or a little stromboli. It didn't really matter, though. When I arrived, she stood up and extended her arms for an embrace, which I gladly gave. My God, Daniel, it's really you, she whispered, breaking the embrace. Jessica in the flesh. What are you doing here? I said this while we sat across from one another. I work as a professor in the college's business department. My spouse obtained a job in administration, and it just so happened that a position opened up that required my skills. She attracted my attention with her left hand and said, well, now, ex-husband. Apparently he had feelings for female classmates which I didn't want to share, and I mean the STD shared with me. She spoke with a tiny annoyance in her voice. I extended my hand to her and said, I apologize, Jessica, what a terrible way to find out. I grimaced, remembering how I'd learned about it. Daniel, that's okay, dear, we have a lot of catching up to do and some of it will be positive and negative. Let's just say I understand your perspective on fidelity. Oh, Daniel, I apologize. There was stillness for a moment, but I chose not to waste time worrying about reality. I came here to distract myself and I couldn't have asked for a better option. We remained at her table until my pie was ready. Then we went outdoors. There were several picnic tables in and around the pizzeria, some more worn than others, and we were fortunate to select one sturdy yet private one. She informed me about her college experience and how the business sector was too stressful for her. She earned her MBA but soon discovered that she was happier teaching future business leaders than being one. They came to this college for him, but she stayed for herself. She enjoyed the kids they attracted and felt like she was making a difference. Her salary was sufficient to cover her expenses and living alone provided her with everything she required and desired. She had several dates but nothing meaningful. I told her my story and I thought she was drawn to the part of my life with Emily. I believe she recognized herself in Emily and realized she was guilty of making similar decisions and relating to my feelings. I could see she was feeling my anguish when I detailed Emily's choice to depart. When I told her about teaching and how much I enjoy my profession and my kids, I could see her light up. I knew she could feel the clouds building over my heart when I mentioned Laura, and she grieved with me when I told her what I had learned about a week ago. She embraced me as I lost control of myself. I knew I'd kept everything bottled up and it all poured out. I'm pleased we went outside and found a secluded table. I needed someone to share it with, and Jessica was there to console me and tell me that it would be okay, that I would be heartbroken, but she could tell me from experience that one day I would live and love again. Proceed to the next chapter. I awoke in a fog again. It's time to end the day. However, I was able to acquire my bearings faster. I knew I was in a hotel in my favorite city outside of town and wearing my clothing. Okay, perhaps that is what will prompt me to see a therapist. Unfamiliar. Was the body next to me looking closer? I noticed Jessica hugging me tightly in her arms while sleeping. She was still dressed in the clothing she had worn the night before. Wow, I wasn't the only one. She snored lightly and her face was pleased. I looked around the room and noticed a pizza box on the little refrigerator. I imagined she'd thrown the leftovers in there and stayed to console me during my meltdown. There was nothing inappropriate here. It was simply one buddy comforting another in misery. Damn, that would awaken Jessica, which is where I needed to be right now. No amount of Zen thinking could alert me to that need, and I tried to be as discreet as possible. But Jessica figured out what I wanted and woke up to make sure I was okay. My God, she was still lovely and her smile was full of youthful joy. Okay, I woke her up and told her everything was great. So it was time to fulfill my morning task, which was the root cause of the perfection violation. She took her turn after I finished. We chose to remain for breakfast. She didn't want to eat and didn't have any change of clothes. Even if she had given me a change of clothes, I chose to stay in them and go to the lobby for coffee. There was a breakfast bar, and as I waited for my coffee, various guests were getting up and deciding what to eat. I checked my phone to see what had happened over the day and night. Anna left one voicemail message. OMG Jackson left a second voicemail message, which I suppose was confirming delivery of the paperwork and checking to see if I had received the first message. My parents missed a call. Apparently word had spread and they received another missed call from an unknown number. I was able to carry the coffee to my room without spilling much. Jessica tried her best to tidy up and politely accepted my coffee. We discussed what happened last night and she assured me that everything was all right. She just didn't think I should be alone that night. Daniel, you should go home. She replied bluntly. DARS, I do not have a home. You understand what I mean. You will experience new emotions now, but the grief must be released. For your own and Laura's sake, you should start quitting this relationship, whatever it is. Go on. I know you've been there and you are probably correct, but it isn't that simple. Daniel, I am aware of this as well, but you are correct. I can tell you from experience that self-pity leads to a deeper depression that is more difficult to recover from. And she stared at me with the same passion I recalled from high school, not a physical passion, but a profound loving desire that I greatly missed. Daniel, I will be here when you are ready. I will be there for you then. She grinned. Her wicked naughty smile was accompanied by a giggle. No, not right here. Jessica was correct, of course, and I packed my luggage to return and face my future. Proceed to the next chapter. The drive back wasn't as long or tedious as it had been a week before, 1 week ago. Really, in many respects, it seems like half a lifetime has passed. I didn't need to speed, so the trip took longer than normal. I needed a strategy, so I used this moment to decide who I wanted to talk to and what I was going to do. Jessica left the loon message on my phone. She texted me, be strong, be open, trust your instincts. When the mobile service improved enough, I called Anna. I hadn't spoken to her since delivering the video, and I felt that knowing how Laura was feeling and what others were saying would help me decide how to move. Daniel, thank God, where are you now? How are you doing? Why did you drop off the radar? I'm so sorry. I suspected but did not know Anna responded to my call. Apparently I had left her in the dark for much too long. I'm returning home. I've improved, but the week and going out of town have made things slightly better. I thought that was the greatest way to keep my emotions under control. I tried to answer the majority of her questions, remembering that I wasn't choosing sides right. Yes, Margie, do not worry, I understand. Laura is pretty much alone here, and I'm glad she has someone to turn to. Well, you've had it up to here with her, she remarked, continuing when I began to interrupt. I understand, honey, she has been through a lot. I had no idea she would ever consider something like this. I suppose that makes two of us. I said in a neutral tone. Some of the vitality I stole from Jessica started to dwindle away. A close buddy informed me that I should get off my ass and start looking for a way to go forward, which should begin by talking to Laura. I have been thinking about what will help me get through this. Please do not interpret this as idle curiosity, but how is she doing? She became an emotional disaster for a spell. What she went through to get back here has had a significant impact on her being alone without you. She understands she made a mistake and has finally told me everything that led up to your leaving. Of course she has no idea how much you know, but she knows it's enough to end your relationship at first glance. I believe she is hoping that things can be repaired. However, I believe she understands that things are no longer fixable. Being catered to has crushed her, and she is only now able to communicate and eat. I can't imagine how you are feeling, Daniel. I will not deceive you, Margie. I feel as worthless as a fart in the wind. I've always wanted to use the phrase, but never had the chance, so I grinned crookedly as I continued, and it's all I can do to keep on course. I'm not apologizing. She feels terrible. She is entirely responsible for the current situation. I understand, honey, and so does she. On one of the rare occasions when she was sane enough to speak with me, she told me what she had done and went into great detail why. So what are the rumors circulating about me and Laura, Daniel, since it's summer and Laura has me under semi-suicidal surveillance? I'm not sure what everyone is talking about. There is a lot of information and misinformation floating around, and I'm sure some of it is being used to its full potential. Gossipers in general cannot get enough of speckle on what others are up to. She said it with irritation, so she didn't need to discuss it with anyone else. Then I can't be certain. However, if she did not speak with anyone on the phone, it is unlikely. I wasn't sure what I'd do with information about what others might know, but it would be nice to be able to visit places in the city with an idea of how people might react to my presence. At the very least, I anticipated knowing sympathetic looks, and I emphasize sympathetic looks in places they didn't expect me to see or notice. I've seen it before twice. I pulled over to the side of the road to get gas and a drink, then texted Laura. It's time to talk. I returned to the highway and let my thoughts wander down the road. Two issues bothered me the most: Laura's ease in entering into an affair, as well as my inability to see what she was up to. Both of these reasons stemmed from the fact that I completely trusted her. I knew I was doing it, though this was not the first time this had occurred. This is the third deeply committed relationship I've ever had. I knew I needed to stop thinking like this, or I'd regret it. I knew a fourth time would be unlikely, and if I thought too deeply about my own hurt and disappointment, as Laura did, there would most likely be no other opportunity to confide. My thoughts turned to Jessica. For starters, she was exactly where I wanted her to be. No, it had to be. She also held a special place in my heart and will always do. Would it be possible to try again with her? Would that be a wise decision? Should I wait, and what happens if I wait too long? She's still a beautiful woman, and I'm not sure how long she'll be willing to commit to a relationship with me. She claims she hasn't been tempted to try with anyone else, but how long can this last? My phone beeped. Really? Yes, name a time and location. Okay. Where shall we meet? somewhere safe for both of us. However, I am alone. Is it preferable if it is a friend or a witness? Maybe legally, but I don't know about the relationship, since we will not be together. That is settled. Even when my anger subsides, my pain persists and forgiveness is impossible. My memories are still vivid, strong and clear. The house has been ruled out. It isn't neutral for either of us. The restaurant too, but I'm not sure I can control my rage enough to exclude other customers from our business. That leaves either the open house or Margie's apartment. When you need them, people tend to take the "I don't want to be involved" approach, and when you don't need them, they take out their cell phone, write down your information and dial 911. So if she permits it, Margie's apartment would be the best place to go. I called Anna and explained my plans. We would talk in her living room and Margie would be there in case things got out of hand. I apologized over and over again for being presumptuous and abusing our friendship. She was very sweet and assured me that it was not an imposition, that she was a friend to both of us and that if it would benefit us as a couple or individuals, she would gladly do so. We cut the conversation short. I pulled over to the curb and sent Laura another text. "I'll be there tomorrow at 1:00" and disconnected my phone. I continued on my way home with trepidation in my thoughts and heart. Next chapter, I woke up and glanced at the ceiling. Acceptance isn't that the last step in the process. Although forgiveness and forgetting were literally years away, I was beginning to feel like I was accepting the situation. I was disappointed in Laura's decision and my naive confidence, but I no longer berated myself for anything. It was a fork in the road of life and I was ready to make a choice and move on. After scrambling eggs and bacon heels. Everything, doesn't it? I decided to phone my parents and let them know I was alive and find out what they knew. Rumors had reached them that we had returned from the conference separately, but nothing more than that. I spelled out the PG version of the event to them and informed them that things were bad enough that I had filed divorce papers with Laura. They were regretful and earnest, but stated what I expected them to say and that they would be there for me when and how I needed them. I turned on my laptop and checked my email. It had been more than a week since I last logged on. Wow, that's a lot of spam. I thought to myself as I began essing through what was trash and what needed to be kept. I wasn't prepared to read much, except for a few follow-up emails from vendors I met during the conference. There was nothing really important in my inbox before I knew it was nearly midday and I needed to prepare for March jeans. A polo and loafers are appropriate today, comfortable without being overly casual. I didn't want to show her what she had thrown away, and I wanted our meeting to be more business-like than informal talk. One of the most significant distinctions this time around in ending a long-term relationship was the ability to communicate with one another. Of course the decision had been made, but I hoped we could work through the emotional anguish and process it ourselves. Did I just think that what a pile of rubbish? Maybe I should have become a therapist, because I enjoy this kind of social philosophical gibberish. It was time to confront my future and, as a doomed man, I waddled into my car and headed to Anna's condo in the following chapter. Anna lived alone on the opposite side of town. She had married right out of high school, seemingly in defiance of her parents, who were continually bickering about their relationship. As it turned out, the parents were correct. Neither of them was mature enough or suitable for a long-term commitment. They divorced before Anna graduated from high school and parted on good terms. She dated and had a few relationships, but she wasn't looking for anything long-term. I'm sure she had a buddy with benefits or two, but our relationship was very different. We were each other's best friends and gender did not matter to us. I pulled into the parking lot and sat for a bit attempting to deal with my emotions. I wasn't expecting wrath or tears, but I wasn't really sure what would happen in the end, so I wanted to approach the matter as calmly and confidently as possible. Anna opened the door nearly as soon as I knocked and wrapped me in a massive hug. She pressed me against her, perhaps attempting to squeeze out as much agony and worry as she could. She undoubtedly intended to soothe me for the upcoming week. I hugged and rubbed her back, letting her know I understood. She pulled back tears in her eyes and said she's in the living room. Be honest to yourself, yet treat her as gently as possible. She is deeply remorseful. She smiled weakly and went to her bedroom. I came into the living area and instantly noticed Laura. She was dressed nicely, perhaps trying to impress me as much as possible, but it appeared to me that the previous week had been as difficult for her as it had been for me. I nodded as I walked inside and sat across from her. Eyes were filled with an odd blend of optimism and terror. "Hello, Laura, how are you really? How is it going?" That was the best I could manage to greet her. Isn't it funny how certain phrases have gotten so ingrained in us that we use them without thinking twice? I could tell how she was feeling based on her expression, and, to be honest, I didn't care, but as an automaton, I asked a query. "Oh, Daniel, I am feeling better," she responded. For a time, we sat staring at each other trying to figure out what the other was thinking. "Laura, you requested for time to talk, so I'll let you start." She paused for a moment. "Now that you're here, I'm not sure where to begin. We've always been honest with one another. We've always been honest with each other." She muttered when I modified the words, "So I'd recommend that you begin with what is on your mind and then we can proceed from there. First and foremost, I understand that this will not come across as honest, but I apologize. I am sorry I made this decision. I'm sorry I didn't contact you and I'm sorry you had to see my violation." I snorted and mumbled misbehavior. "Daniel, there is no phrase to describe what I did. I committed adultery. I cheated heartlessly and practically in front of the individuals with whom I work. I selfishly decided to attempt something. An unit ally excluded you from the decision. I did all of this and unintentionally displayed it in front of you. I played the and paid as low as I could. I'm more lost and alone than I ever anticipated. I can't explain why I did it. I truly cannot. I've had more than a week to figure out what arguments I used to convince my mind to accept its cliché, but I've lost a piece of myself and feel empty inside." She ended with her head lowered and tears running down her cheeks. "You may have a vague concept of how I feel, Laura, because I had no say in the matter and have no idea why you did what you do. I honestly believe that my feelings of emptiness exceed yours." I mumbled. Laura nodded. "I am aware of this and I was not attempting to minimize your feelings. I'm simply trying to honor your desire and speak from the heart." I sat back and observed her. There was no doubt in my mind that she was sorry for anything. She was not merely apologetic for being caught. She didn't apologize for hurting me. She was not regretful for her momentary mistake of judgment or the fact that she needed to locate a place to live. She apologized for everything it was eating her up inside, and my heart begged me to console her. "So you're telling me that you got into it with him for no obvious reason?" I needed to focus. My past feelings for her could not keep me from protecting myself in a way. "Yeah, so much has happened recently that I can't remember what caused it or why it was a significant error in judgment. We went to a few sessions together and hit it off right away. He enjoyed my sense of humor and I welcomed his laughs and educational ideas. After lunch, we hugged before splitting up to go to the next clinic, and it was a beautiful sensation, nothing like you or me, but extremely similar to how we spoke about someone. We would bring a link to our bedsides to enhance the experience. I was not seeking for anything else. Daniel, please believe me." We gazed at each other and kissed. It stuck with me for the rest of the day. "I suppose there was no need to inform me that you found a replacement." I spit. "Oh God. No, Daniel, he wasn't a replacement. Not once, not on any occasion, did I feel compelled to replace you. He was both electric and mischievous. It's like when we did stuff in public. The illegality of acting against the norm, the risky times where we could have been apprehended. The main distinction is that this time I was stupid. The decisions I made will haunt and torment me for the rest of my life." She stated this while staring straight at me. Her eyes communicated from the core of her existence. I could see the misery and self-loathing she lived with. Looking at her, I got a frightening notion. Have you seen the doctor to get checked out? Yet then I suppose she was still thinking about her previous statement. Not yet, however. Anna has compiled a list of local therapists who have worked with folks in similar situations. No, it's a doctor, Daniel. You and I both know you can't get pregnant from this affair. I'm on the pill, she said with an angry expression. My face hardened. That is not what I'm talking about, and if it did, neither of your life would be worth the 2 cents in my pocket. She reneged at my appearance and tone. I'm referring to socially transmitted diseases. Laura, you could have contracted the sickness, putting your life and health at danger, or you could have brought it to me. I'll make an appointment to get checked out first thing Monday, and I recommend you do the same. And I could see by her expression that she hadn't even considered it, and the thought that she was jeopardizing not only my emotional stability but also my health caused her to temper her enthusiasm. I thought it was impossible. He claimed he was clean and that as long as I was protected, we had nothing to worry about. I chuckled, but my voice was full of hatred. You're willing to believe the word of a man who is eager to amuse another man's wife. Are you serious, Laura? He's an isolated man with the morals of a street cat. Do you genuinely believe he is pure and will tell the truth no matter what? She bowed her head and grieved, realizing how stupid she was. This was taking the problem to the next level. Oh Kit, what did I do? Burst out of her mouth in between sobs. You jeopardized your life, health and marriage for an imagined feeling. Let's hope you just lose your marriage. She burst into tears. Her eyes inflamed, imploring me to reconsider behind her cry. I understood she knew exactly what was going to happen. I believe therapy would be a good option for you at this time. Before beginning a new relationship, you must first determine the root cause. I stroked my tongue over her wounds one more time. I didn't want to permanently shatter her, but I did want her to recognize that her acts had gone too far and that there was no going back, at least in terms of our marriage. I watched her cry for a little longer. There was no enjoyment in it. I could tell she had damaged herself almost as much as she had harmed me, and she would have to pay the price. Psychologically and emotionally for a long time I always assumed that if anything like this happened, the love would fade away fast, but it did not. Sometimes it shows as hatred, but this is just due to the sorrow and disappointment caused by the actions of people we trusted to turn love into hate. Hatred is not the opposite of love. They are far more alike than we'd like to admit. I listened to her point of view and there was nothing we could both do to help. I rose up to leave and she ran over to hug me. I guess she was attempting to make me feel her love for me, while simultaneously holding on to our relationship's last hope. I cuddled her and waited for her to finish weeping. She snorted a few times and I could feel her grasp relax as she gazed up at me. I'll regret this forever, but if you give me another chance, I pledge to make it right every day for the rest of our lives. She expressed a renewed feeling of hope. I will apologize to Laura, but I do not see myself trusting you again, and honestly, I don't think one of us would want to live that way. She shook slightly, continuing her passionate embrace for a moment and then released me. I turned to leave. She turned as well, headed for the guest room. She paused, looked back and said, I really love you, Daniel Fredericks, don't mind my fault, please. Never doubt that I thought it wasn't enough to keep my legs closed. So I said, I know Laura. I know Anna must have paid attention enough to notice. When we were finished and moved by Laura into the hallway, she gave me another hug and led me to the door. You know I am not a relationship expert, but are you certain you can't forgive her? Asked Anna. No, Margie, I truly will forgive her someday. The trouble is that I'll never forget and forgiveness would take too long, causing more damage than we could repair. That would kill us, so we must finish it now. We can still do it cordially. She nodded, kissed my cheek and watched as I walked away proceed to the next chapter. The divorce proceeded quietly and without incident. We didn't have many assets and, because of Laura's regret, the house was not an issue. Her attorney was not pleased with her decision to accept whatever terms I proposed, but I was completely fair regarding our financial and physical possessions. We hadn't been married long enough to have earned significant wealth or investments, so that was a simple issue. Her lawyer attempted to persuade her to undertake counseling, but she declined, claiming it was a waste of time and money. Although I had heard she had been seeing a therapist. We spoke frequently and she was always there for me when I needed to chat or cry. We were still friends and probably always would be, but she wasn't my best friend anymore, and she acknowledged that it wasn't because of Jan's assistance. I had repeatedly informed her that I respected her decision and would be unhappy if she didn't. I understand that my new best friend was my first best friend, Jessica. We began spending time together, usually me visiting her, but because we were both teachers, our summers were basically free of travel to one location or another. Perhaps it explains why we were able to reconnect so quickly. Although it was several weeks before we made love for the first time, I made the event memorable. I could see she was eager and perhaps just wanted to get me into one of the bedrooms, but our emotional moods were always in the forefront. I ended up booking a room at a hotel in her city and was able to get the exact same room as before we went out to dinner, and when I drove her to the hotel, she was tipsy. She was already giggling as I walked her to the same room's door. "So you're going to make me a liar?" she joked with a giggle. "I suppose in a technical sense I am," I replied with a smile, but this is where I realized I was going to survive the future and considered who I wanted to survive it. With the giggling ceased and a large smile arose. She sprang into my arms and I brought her in. Let's just say we didn't wake up wearing our clothing the next morning. The next chapter. Jessica and I have been married for over 2 years. It didn't happen immediately. I was still wary of long-term relationships and Jessica was only 2. I stayed at my school for another year and it was evident that as much as I loved my students, the distance was causing pressure in my relationship with Jessica. Fortunately, a position in my favorite city's social studies department opened up and I was hired. I often wondered if there was any collegiate influence here. After another year, we felt at ease and ready to be together after I proposed and we scheduled a date. She did something I felt was crazy at the time. She contacted Emily. It took some effort, but she was finally able to speak directly to Emily's manager and mention my name. Jessica received a direct call from Emily, which led to her visit as well. I was to discover that there was a method to Jessica's madness. I picked Emily up at the airport and she looked just as good as the day she left me years ago. I'd gotten over it and was genuinely delighted to see her. She was accompanied by a small entourage, including her personal assistant and a friend who had come on vacation to learn more about Emily's past. We exchanged hugs and a pleasant kiss before I collected their baggage. Emily had a solid Hollywood career and while she wasn't a celebrity, she was always in demand for television and movies. I arranged for her to speak at our school and take a few lessons. When the staff and students learned about our history, I instantly became a hero to the all-male teachers and a few male pupils. They definitely looked at old Mr. Fredericks differently. Now, when the school day ended, Emily and I sat in my classroom and reminisced about old times. I'm sure she saw the query on my face. "Daniel, I've made a lot of decisions in my life and I can honestly say there have been both simple and difficult ones. I have done my best to make those decisions without looking back. Do I have any regrets? True, but not all of us do. However, the most difficult decision I've ever had to make has never given me any regret. Almost anyway." She grinned bitterly as she stated this. Could we have gotten acquainted outside of Hollywood? Yes, and I have to admit that when the quick pace of life in Southern California gets to me, I start thinking about what ifs on the other side. I've done things and met people I would not have if I hadn't left you and moved there. It's not that you've kept me back. You are such a loving and generous person and I am confident you would never have gotten in my way. But I was correct. There were options and acts that would have jeopardized our safety and I would not have seized some of those opportunities to save your feelings. I've tried hard to keep my moral compass as near to my inner self as possible, but it's cost me certain roles, and I'm fine with that, even if my manager Horace isn't. She laughed still. Rumors are swirling and I just cannot live up to your expectations. She grinned modestly. Daniel, I am realizing my dream and I had to leave some things behind to do it, and I've accepted that. I hope you understand. She finished by reaching for my hand. She went on to inform me about Hollywood's marital customs. It appears that they were almost married for convenience. Instead, parents choose marriages based on promises made at birth or earlier. They were more like royal entreaties, in which an actor's or actress's career was made or improved based on who they married and how long they stayed together. There were very few married couples in the entertainment profession that were together for love and long-term commitment. I could see she wasn't pleased or proud of that portion of her life, and I knew she desired a love-based relationship. I told her that I genuinely hoped that she would eventually be in a position to find it. Jessica had hoped Emily's visit would accomplish exactly this. She had a keen business sense, and before entering into a lifelong contract with me, she wanted to ensure that there were no loose ends that would prohibit us from honoring it. Honestly, I'm delighted she did. Ending my connection with Emily was something I had no idea I needed. It wasn't a lack of trust. Rather, I needed someone to help me mend my heart, not only from Laura's betrayal, but also from previous rejections, including by Jessica herself. We're expecting a baby boy, and I feel we'll be pleased. Emily takes time away from Hollywood to see us. She enjoys hiding with us, and I can see she's become more relaxed. We went to California, and Emily was correct. The lifestyle is not something Jessica and I enjoy. It was lovely to be there, and we will surely return, but it reminded us of how fortunate and pleased we are with the life we have chosen for ourselves. Laura didn't linger in the neighborhood that following summer she was able to locate a teaching job near her hometown. She stays in touch with us periodically, sending letters and birthday cards, so I know she's doing well and has lately acquired a committed lover. I hope she has forgiven herself and is committed to him in the way they both deserve. I'm confident she will be faithful this time at least. I want to be certain about it. Anna is dating the newest assistant principal at the high school where I used to work. She's not in a hurry to be married, but she's becoming more settled. I am sure her students meet all of her parental demands. She adores them all. I hope her new beau sees it in her as much as I do. It has been a journey. Every trip has highs and lows, planned and unforeseen events, a combination of intention and spontaneity. Unfortunately, we cannot always choose between intention and spontaneity. My goal is that Jessica's bright thinking will allow us to choose the plan as much as possible, while still enjoying the moments that do not follow it when they occur. We truly did end up together, as I had hoped 10 years ago. I hope forever means precisely what it should. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.